Hello, it's Miss Heather, piano and voice teacher at Conservatory of the Ozarks, working on another study guide video, just to help myself study for my comps and orals for my music master's degree. I'm going to finish reading the second half of the part of my class notebook called Rhythms of Faith, the Rhythmic Chorale Tradition in the 19th Century. So, Christian faith was a cultivation process to Moravians. Each moment of the Christian's life was liturgical, as they were to serve others. By applying this concept to chorale rhythms, each note in a chorale became equally important. The altered chorales removed the traditional stresses from the key orthodox theologies of choral texts. This working out of the rhythmic kinks of the original melodies corresponded to the working out of one's own salvation, spoken of in Philippians 2:12. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. The cadence of the Moravian chorales contained the longest note value, which could correspond to the eschatology, if not millennialism, that pietists embraced. Heaven was their goal, and working toward that end was of supreme concern. Further, isometric chorales were easier to sing than the rugged Reformation melodies, and this was a great incentive for a group of pietists who used chorales in daily life. Christian Gregor offers the best description of the difference in thought between the Lutherans and the Moravians when he explains the use of even rhythms in his chorale book's preface. The melodies are for the most part plainly notated in half notes according to their principal sounds and contours, and with reference to the flow of the melody, it will be left to the singer and the organist to supply whatever transitions they think proper. The emphasis on personal choice plays a role pages later, when Gregor writes, "It depends on the liturgist as to which verse and in which key he wishes to or can begin." Gregor even went further by making room for the changing of the bass line, the foundation of the chorale, to suit the personal taste of the musician. One can change the direction of the bass at will. However, this must always be in close agreement with the singing of the congregation. This change is symptomatic of a revolution in theological emphases from the foundation of justification by faith alone and believing, which the Lutherans held supreme, to a strong leaning towards sanctification and the stepwise motion of living out a holy life through daily exercises of piety. This is why Gregor simplified the melodies and rhythms he used for his chorale book, and it is the whole reason Moravians sing isometric chorales as a whole. Such piety shaped their chorales, and in turn, the chorale formed a unique spirituality still evident today in Moravianism. However, other aspects of Moravian and Lutheran environments need to be taken into consideration to fully understand how chorales reflect daily living in these German communities. Some key sociological differences existed between the Moravians and the Missouri Lutherans. This is under the category Other Considerations. For example, Moravians were ecumenical, where the Missouri Lutherans would not dialogue with those who did not agree with the Lutheran confessions and rein Lehre, pure teaching. The Moravian mission efforts sought to convert people using kindness and respect as part of their methodology. One Moravian publication concerning conduct in the missions used language like help and assist to describe the goal of Moravian missionaries. On one hand, they were trying to get rid of the rough edges of Native American culture, creating a new arrangement of society for them, a matter of true philanthropy. On the other hand, Moravian missionaries thought that they were to live among the natives to be moral examples, an outgrowth of their Moravian emphasis on sanctification. David Zeisberger, a missionary in Ohio, exemplified the Moravian methodology of missionary work during his time with the Delaware tribe. This is most evident in his hymnal for the Native Americans, which was not in German, although the tunes were all well-known Moravian chorales, but in the language of the natives he sought to convert. This stands out against the way of the Missouri Lutherans, who published German hymn books predominantly and were found in constant chaos with the other American Lutheran synods because they believed that they held the full truth as Lutherans. Other differences are yet apparent between the two groups. In the Missouri Lutheran home, the man was the head of each home in agreement with Martin Luther's table of duties for each member of a household found in the small catechisms, oftentimes omitted in today's editions. The family unit governed everyday life, and when someone would die, they would be buried in a family cemetery plot, a cluster of varied and diverse figures, shapes, and genders. In contrast, Moravians embraced the concept of equality among people and a different form of social order, replacing the family unit with choirs that maximized the individual loyalty to the religious goal of the community. Galen summarizes the place that choirs held for Moravian life as a whole. The choir, rather than the family, had become the formal agent of socialization. As the choirs came to exert more and more control over the actions of their members, the authority formerly vested in the head of the family waned. Since the choirs made it quite clear that children belonged more to the church than to their parents, for several decades, parental authority was almost non-existent. As early as 1727, Moravians held membership in these segregated groups according to gender, marital status, and age, where they could meet with other people exactly like themselves for prayer and liturgical functions. Choirs also provided a place where Moravians could work on assigned tasks to contribute to the uniform economic welfare of all people in their religious enclave. In Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, everyone worked in his or her own respective choir division, the single, the married, the children, and the widowed, all toiling for the community as a whole. The choir delivered the proceeds of this labor to the central administration, and in turn was regularly assisted in its share of necessary foodstuffs, clothing, and linen. Everyone ate, slept, prayed, and worked within the choir organization. Zinzendorf believed that the choirs provided more systematic training for the young than the family unit could, and it also prepared children for the mission field by teaching them to communicate in German, English, and Native American languages, like Mohawk. There is no better embodiment of this even and smooth social order than a Moravian cemetery, where people were buried with their fellow choir members, arranged in perfectly straight rows with identical square white tombstones that were set flush with the grass. The burial practice and social order of the Moravians evidence a different way of living from the Missouri Lutherans. More importantly, it brings into focus the uniqueness of the theological and hymnological expressions peculiar to each group. Such details tell us a lot about these 19th century people that many scholars have not considered. Analysis of chorales. The analysis of the first verse of several chorales and their rhythms can help us to delineate what has been proposed in this study. Let us turn to Es ist das Heil uns kommen her, one of Martin Luther's original Kernlieder from 1524. Verse 1 of the chorale is in Walter's Kirchengesangbuch of 1847, as Luther had written it. Many Lutherans today sing this chorale with the following English translation from the Lutheran Book of Worship. Salvation unto us has come, by God's free grace and favor. Good works cannot avert our doom. They help and save us never. Faith looks to Jesus Christ alone, who did for all the world atone. He is our mediator. When underlaying the rhythmic construction of the chorale melody from Laritz's tune book with the Luther text, the distinct nature of this chorale tradition takes form in front of our eyes. Notice how the rhythm fits the text and begins out key theological words like Gnade, which means mercy, and Guten, which means blessings, and Glaub, which means faith, all things that God gives the Christian, by placing them on strong beats, usually beat 1. They are offset with short notes that accompany less important words, such as prepositions, definite articles, and pronouns, like it, from, thee, they, the, and he. The opposition of short and long note values form a tension, even a rhythmic fabric, throughout the entire chorale, which could be interpreted as iconic of the opposition of law and gospel until they cease with the final pronouncement of the gospel. Ist der Mittler worden. He has become our mediator. Compare this rhythmic version with the following isometric version from Gregor's chorale book. Gregor's harmonization takes out the short notes of the original rhythmic version to create an equality of notes and words. Almost all notes are half notes except the quarter note motion that happens on und, and they don't want to save, mogen nicht, and für, or for. Mittler, or mediator, receives 2 quarter notes on the first half of the second beat of the measure, which serves as a segue into the last measure, containing a fermata on the past participle worden. He became our mediator. The final cadence in this chorale brings out the eschatological emphasis of Moravian theology on the steady working out of the Christian life, pointing to our end, eternity with God, by using a whole note, the longest note of Gregor's version, followed by a fermata. The inclusion of fermata at the end of each phrase was indicative of a church with a strong instrumental program, and it illustrated a Moravian theological perspective at the same time. I never realized that whole notes and eschatology were connected. That's funny. In the Lyritz version, the printed fermatae were not observed, but were merely an antiquated way of notating chorales from the Baroque practice of J.S. Bach in his era, an epoch saturated with pietist lyricism. Notice that in the Moravian version of the chorale that some letters have been placed between the text and the musical line above kommen and nimmer and der Glaubt seit Jesum. These letters are symbolic reduction of moving quarter notes in the bass line, which for the sake of space have been omitted in this figure. The B-flat, E-flat above the word kommen, for example, indicates that Gregor's chorale book has the organ pedals playing an ascending line, B-flat, C, D, E-flat. The F, C, and CF motion in the pedal accompanying the text, Der Glaubt seit Jesum, is particularly interesting as it creates a sonic peak that points upward, as if to remind the singer in the middle of the chorale that their attention should be on heaven. An analysis of Luther's chorale, Ein feste Burg, also one of Luther's original 8 chorales, serves as yet another illustration of the Missouri Lutheran theology. Walter's hymn book includes the text in its original form. It is accompanied below by an English translation known by most, if not all, English-speaking Lutherans today. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. He breaks the cruel oppressor's rod and wins salvation glorious. The old satanic foe has sworn to work us woe. With craft and dreadful might he arms himself to fight. On earth is not his equal. Lyritz's tune book includes Luther's original rhythmic tune to accompany this text. By placing important words with long notes, Festeberg, strong fortress, Gute, mercy, Hilft uns frei, help free us, and sein Rüstung, his armor, emphasis is more on God and his saving, justifying work. than in the Gregor version. Compare the two below, and different stresses will be again evident. Notice once again that Lawrence retains an iconography of law and gospel, while Gregor removes rhythmic distinction and paints a picture of the daily progression to eternity. Berg is highlighted in the Gregor version by the use of quarter notes, but so is und, and as well as Waffen, weapon. The only place where it seems like the quarter notes could serve the purpose of bringing out the text would be at the last phrase, on earth is not his equal, Seins gleichen, where the descending quarter notes contrast with the final half notes in the melody line. Regardless, giving stress or ornamentation to unimportant or random words could show that the quarter notes were merely ornamental. But when looking close enough, the quarter notes appear to be formulaic, cadential formulas, as they prepare the singer for the end of the phrase, happening mostly 2 notes before the cadence itself, either in the melody or the organ's bass line, serving a practical purpose. Thus, this diminishes original theological stresses of the Lutheran chorale to bring it in line with Moravian theology. Whether this shift was intentional or a conscious change is not for sure, but it does illustrate further why Missouri Lutherans kept the original chorale rhythms and texts to retain the landmarks of Lutheran theological thought. Conclusion. Finally, the rhythmic chorale tradition found an important place in 19th century Lutheranism as the teachings of the Lutheran confessional writings became important once again. Saxon Lutheran immigrants to Missouri emphasized the rhythmic forms in Reformation melodies because these things were intrinsically tied to German Lutheran identity and life. They served as figures that held within them God's saving grace. In contrast, the Moravians sang isometric chorales as symbols of their theology of sanctification and lifelong personal piety. The even rhythms reflected their missionary method and the equality of people in their religious communities. The cadences put more emphasis on the end as they prepared the singer for eternity. Both of these religious sects shared the chorale tradition, but adapted it because of differing societal environments and contrasting theological emphases. These two approaches to singing chorales were shaped by different ways of living and believing, and they still shape the people in both groups today as they live lives of faith. The end.